Well, good morning, everyone. It is so good to see you all. It's been a minute. Well, welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist of Medfield. Welcome to all of you who are streaming in from home. I hope that you will stay following the service for social hour downstairs. This congregation was first gathered in 1651. This beautiful historic meeting house where we worship was built in 1789, which was and is still now unceded ancestral lands of the Nipmuc. They inhabited this area for thousands of years prior to the arrival of the European colonists. These Puritan colonists, our direct religious ancestors, arrived on these shores as uninvited immigrants, believing that they were God's chosen people. They built meeting houses in towns all over Massachusetts, often by brutal force. And in doing so, they promoted physically, emotionally, and spiritually our white supremacy culture that is still with us today. So this morning, we acknowledge that this meeting house, our congregation, our town, our state, and our country are all a part of this violent legacy. Holding all of these hard truths in our hearts, we welcome you here. Friends, welcome to this place. Here we search for truth and understanding. Here we celebrate life and we contemplate its mysteries. Here we share healing and wholeness. So whoever you are, whatever you believe, wherever you come from, whomever you love, we welcome you to this congregation. With that, I would invite you to turn and greet your neighbor or pass the peace. As we gather here in this sacred space on this wet April morning, I'd invite you to hear the words of my good colleague, the Reverend Lynn Unger, in a poem she in fact wrote yesterday. This is called April 5th. I don't know how this all turns out, and neither do you, but I have to confess it doesn't look good. I wish we were headed for a picnic, for a waltz in the park. I wish we were not ruled by broken men who want to damage everything that they cannot possess. I wish I could tell you what we do now. The street is littered with the petals of cherries that bloomed before the big wind came. Tonight there will be frost, and tender buds will burn. But still, the woods are unfolding into green. And just outside my door, some frog is bellowing for all that he's worth. Who knows what will happen next? All I can tell you is that the fields are ablaze with dandelions who have never even known the meaning of defeat. Come, let us worship together.
I Breathe by Craig Rowland. I breathe in the warmth of this light, its glow, filling the spaces where fear and doubt reside. I breathe out the tension I carry. I release what no longer serves me. I breathe in the strength of our community, a sanctuary of diverse voices and shared purpose. I breathe out the urge to go it alone, I embrace the power of togetherness. I breathe in the courage to speak truth, even when it trembles on my lips. I breathe out the silence that holds me back. I make space for honesty and justice. I breathe in the hope of transformation, knowing we are here to build and to heal. I breathe out despair, trusting that change is born in small acts of love. As we light this chalice, may each breath remind us of the sacred rhythm of life, the pulse of creation, and the power we hold to shape the world around us.
Please rise in body or in spirit for our unison covenants. Love is the spirit of this congregation. Together we covenant to honor our diverse beliefs, listen with empathy, accept responsibility for our words and deeds, care for one another through life's joys and sorrows, compassionately serve the wider community, practice generosity with our time, talent, and treasure, and show reverence for the divine within and among us all. Now please turn to your hymnal and stay standing while we sing Gather the Spirit, number 347 in your gray hymnal. You may be seated.
Today's reading is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 2, verses 1 through 22. The word that Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come ye, and let us walk in the light of the Lord. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east, and are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. Their land also is full of silver and gold, neither is there any end of their treasures. Their land is also full of horses, neither is there any end of their chariots. Their land also is full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands, that which their own fingers have made. And the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself. Therefore forgive them not. Enter into the rock, and hide thee in the dust, for fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty. The lofty looks of man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty, and upon every one that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. And upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan, and upon all the high mountains, and upon all the hills that are lifted up, and upon every high tower, and upon every fenced wall, and upon all the ships of Tarshish, and upon all pleasant pictures. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. And the idols he shall utterly abolish. And they shall go into the holes of the rocks, and into the caves of the earth, for fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. In that day a man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made each one for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats, to go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks, for fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of?
Thank you, Kay. Well, as you may have heard me say before, the months of November and December are an incredibly busy time for a minister. We have Thanksgiving, we have all of the holidays, Hanukkah, my family celebrates Christmas, and around here my daughter has her birthday in November. We do an interfaith community Thanksgiving in November. There's, oh my goodness. Then, we do our semi-annual meeting in December. And then there's the lighting of the tree and the making of the tree and the cookies and all of the things that one does, especially when one has children in their home, and the buying of the presents and the things and the stuff. That all is to say that come Thanksgiving, I was like, okay, I got this. I can get through the next month. I got sabbatical. Just got to get through Christmas Eve. And then I'm gone for 3 months. Freeze a bird, right? So the day after Christmas, I'm on the plane going to the Bahamas with my family. That familiar message comes on. If the cabin loses pressure, please, you'll notice the oxygen mask will fall. Put your own mask on first before assisting anyone near you. And I remember as a child thinking, that seems a little off, right? As a child, I'm used to just doing what I want and taking care of myself. But as a parent, I understand that. I understand that better now. We had a fabulous time in the Bahamas. When we got back, I felt much more reinvigorated, ready for what was next, ready for some time to do things a little differently. And I thought to myself, I'm going to renovate my hallway and my stairwell, and I told my wife in 2 weeks that stairwell will be all done and fresh paint and be great. So it wasn't until I had those 3 foot wide by 8.5 foot tall wallpaper sections to remove with these tools that it took me a whole lot longer. I finished the project on March 29th, largely because my in-laws were coming that weekend, and I can't look bad. And as I was working, I was primarily, I'd spend every afternoon or a lot of afternoons from 2 to 5 working on this. I would mostly listen to music. Occasionally, I put on the news. Remember January? February? And thinking about the attack on marginalized communities that's coming from the administration, immigrants, trans people. I believe there was an executive order saying that the federal government's not allowed to recognize trans people or something like that. Attack on all LGBTQIA communities in a variety of ways. All those public workers whose positions are being cut. I have some close friends who are literally without employment now. It's a scary feeling. And others who are girding themselves up because they had the audacity to go into education. And as a former art teacher, that hurts me more than anything, that teachers who decided to do that with their life are being cut. Those who had the audacity to utter the words inclusion, as if that's a dirty word, or diversity, or equity. Then there's this nonsense of the Gulf of America I hear on the news, Greenland, Panama Canal, Canada. You've been there. Then we hear border czar Tom Homan saying, I'm coming to Boston, and I'm bringing hell with me. Trump becomes chair of the board of directors at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts because it didn't make sense. People resigning in protest. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer decides to change mid-course and back a bill that had no bipartisan input whatsoever. There's breaking of all kinds of international alliances, starting trade wars. There's a reshuffling of the power structure in our entire world right now, and no one, I think any of us, know where we'll land. Economists are warning us of tariffs and the effect they will have on the economy. I hope they're wrong, but they certainly know more about economics than I do, and I would argue they probably know more about it than the current resident of the White House as well. But we will see. We will see what happens. I don't know what will happen, but at that point I shut it off and I listen to music. That's what I did for the rest of it. I was like, enough. It seems like the powers that be are thinking they're better than the rest of us, that perhaps they know more than we do, that perhaps they think they're like God, at least trying to wield that type of power to make changes and decisions unilaterally. So much of what we're seeing is a demonstration of the classic power and control. When I took a domestic violence class in seminary, we talked a lot about power and control. And it's so easy to think of domestic violence as physical abuse. There are so many kinds of abuse: emotional, spiritual, physical, all of this. All of what I'm hearing brings back to me on a deep level this idea of power and control. It's a hallmark of our white supremacy culture that we live in. This idea that some of us at birth, those who look like me, are born with a level of privilege that others aren't. That those who look like me are at the top of our American caste system. We're used to power and control. I'm used to power and control, frankly, to be honest. And anytime someone wants to threaten my power and control, I see it as an attack on me. Therefore, diversity, equity, inclusion is scary. How dare you include everyone? I might have to give up some of my power. But those who are in power, who often don't get challenged, it's hard for them to understand that some of what they do, big and small, causes real harm to others. And that we need to hold them accountable. You need to hold me accountable. It's almost like, and stay with me here, that some of our elected officials have internalized this patriarchal, powerful, and vengeful God that we often see described in the Hebrew Scriptures, written thousands of years ago in a very different society, a very different time. If only they could exhibit this control and dominion of the Lord. They had power over others, as described in our reading this morning in Isaiah 2. Enter into the rock and hide thee in the dust for fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty. For the day the Lord of hosts shall be upon everyone that is proud and lofty, and upon everyone that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. That's power. The God that's portrayed in Hebrew Scriptures is very different than the God that is described in Christian Scriptures. This forgiving man of Jesus who washed feet and fed the hungry and clothed the poor. But to keep it in context, Jesus lived hundreds and even thousands of years later than these stories from the Hebrew Scriptures. Different time and place. People had very different needs of their God in the ancient Near East versus those who were living under the brutal Roman Empire like Jesus was. The world was a very different place in 1500 BCE than it was in 30 CE. In the Hebrew Scriptures, there are several manifestations of God. Yahweh, often translated as Jehovah. There was Elohim, a very different manifestation of God. Adonai, El Shaddai, each conveying different aspects of God's nature and attributes. If you wonder why those in the ancient Near East might want a powerful God, think about what they were living in. There was a lot of war, struggling to survive. It's nice having a powerful God on your side. Frankly, that's why I love the Marvel movies. I love having the idea of Thor or the Hulk behind me, right, as I do something hard. In my reading, a lot of those stories have that type of idea behind them to give you strength when you're afraid. There's something powerful there and real. But these manifestations of God, they're very human-like. They can be vengeful, brutal, jealous, controlling, angry, just like a lot of men I know. But there's a very different and very different aspect of this story in Isaiah 2. I find it compelling. As we heard, for the day the Lord of hosts shall be upon everyone that is proud and lofty, and upon everyone that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low, and upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and then upon all the oaks of Bashan, and upon all the high mountains and upon all the hills that are lifted up, and upon every high tower and upon every fenced wall. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. The loftiness of man, the haughtiness of man shall be bowed low, and the Lord shall be exalted. Now, just to be clear, they say the word man, they are referring to all humans, right? That's how they would have said that. Well, over sabbatical, while I wasn't here on Sundays, my wife, I think you all know, is UCC. She grew up Lutheran, and so she's Christian. And I'm UU. I grew up UU. But all my good buddies are at the UCC church. I've been going there for years. Before I went to seminary, that's where I went. I've talked about this before, but it requires a lot of theological sort of, but great people, because when the rubber hits the road, they preach God of love, and that kind of idea, just not that different from UU if you squint. But I got to tell you that going there repeatedly, I found myself getting more and more annoyed, because all the liturgy, the song, the words, it doesn't ring true. Like in the hymnal, there's all this talk of God as a warrior, like a battle, and like all this war metaphor, and I'm like, that doesn't ring true to me. But again, there's a lot of wonderfulness that's preached there as well, this God of love. But there's one thing there that frankly I miss here, and I miss in most UU churches. See, we are a diverse theological congregation. That is one of our strengths as a Unitarian Universalist faith, that we have a diversity of belief. We, amongst us, have atheists, theists, agnostics, pagans, Buddhists, Jews, people, we honor all of that. But I do believe in a sort of a pantheistic view of God, this idea that God is within, among, I can't put a finger on it, but that's just sort of part of my experience. And one thing that, since in the UCC church, they all believe in God, there's a surrender that can happen. Sunday morning, there's a giving up of my personal ego to think of something bigger than myself. And in fact, architecturally, one of the reasons I was so impressed when I came here, do you know architecturally this is a unique meeting house? Most meeting houses in New England actually have one big pulpit in the middle, right? And so to have, when this was built, we were very Trinitarian, so we have 1, 2, and 3. What does 3 represent? For me, when I came in, it represents light. Literally, light comes through that stained glass window, light of many colors. I, as the speaker, I'm off to the side. I'm not the center anymore. My goodness, when I worked at the Arlington Street Church, they have a pulpit as high as heaven, and the minister's like, oh, right? Same in Canton, same in Hingham. I mean, it's kind of cool that it's, As I was thinking this, I found this blog post by a colleague, the Reverend Peter Bellata. He's the minister of First Parish Lexington Unitarian Universalist Church. He wrote this in 2011. He writes, "Recently a fellow who does some work for my congregation was in the building. We'd never met before, and so we introduced ourselves and chatted for a while in the church office. At one point he says to me, I should tell you this story. I have this 13-year-old son who's been asking a lot of religious questions lately. See, I was raised Catholic, but we're not involved at all and haven't really given him a religious education. One day my son was with me in the car, and when we drove by another Unitarian Universalist church, he asked me, because he knew that I did some work for that church, he asked me what kind of church it was. And when I told him, he asked, what Unitarian Universalists believe? So I told him, they don't really believe anything specific. It's a religion about whatever you think or whatever you believe or feel that religion's all about. And my son said, well, that's the kind of church I want to go to. And the fellow chuckled, and we had some pleasantries about his teenager being a Unitarian Universalist without even knowing it. Well, my pleasant facade betrayed the bomb that had just gone off in my head. Oh dear, it's true. We have institutionalized narcissism. Here was a person that was not involved in a UU church and yet knew something about us. As an outsider, the message he received about us was that it's about whatever you want to be. It's all about you. The man did not invent this perception of Unitarian Universalism. He got it from somewhere. And frankly, he got it from us. It could be posited that many thoughtful UUs talked to him about our creedless religion, our covenantal communities in which one is free to search for truth and meaning. It's likely that thoughtful UUs explained being gathered around basic principles and values rather than beliefs and doctrines. But what he heard was, we don't believe anything. We're just making this stuff up as we go along. And of course, it's possible that this is precisely what he was told. He writes, this ever-present narcissism enshrined in our congregation spawns entitlement and complaint rather than engagement and curiosity because, well, you're not giving me what I want all the time. I want what I want. He goes on to say, inasmuch as Unitarian Universalist communities continue to neglect discernment, theology, discipline, spiritual practice, faith formation, vocation, and engagement with our historic testimonies and traditions, we will never be a missional religious movement. Wow. I read that and I was floored. But he put into words this thing that I was feeling. See, this UCC church I've been part of, I'm not a member there, but I've been a part of for a long time. They're not arguing about theology or not. They're out doing the work in the streets. Someone starts talking nonsense at a meeting. The minister would turn and say, where's God in this for you when you're arguing about the color of the drapes? Sometimes I think we UUs, and I am one, I am fully UU, raised by a UU, I am a UU, but we do have a tendency to sometimes be a bit self-absorbed, sometimes a bit full of ourselves. Sometimes that's seen as snobbery. I would often chalk this up in my mind as elitism in our history of elitism that goes back hundreds of years. The Boston Brahmins in this area were very wealthy and very sure that they were right. But the great strength that we have is a plurality of theologies. And some of us aren't sure if there's a God. Some believe in all, we have different ideas of God. But regardless of your personal theology, I'd invite all of you, especially here in this sacred place, in this beautiful meeting house, I would invite you to think about how small and frankly insignificant each of us are. Think about how short your life is. You're lucky if you live 100 years on earth, maybe a bit more. We're here in this space, surrounded by the breath of countless generations of people who came before. We're surrounded by a vast atmosphere of sky and clouds, surrounded by an inky blackness of space and dust all floating around. Here in this average solar system, one of billions within the Milky Way galaxy, within a universe larger than any of our pitiful human minds can even comprehend. So perhaps we may want to occasionally surrender ourselves to our ego, to our inflated sense of self-worth. Or as the ancient writer of Isaiah 2 put it, the loftiness of man shall be bowed low, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. In that passage I hear, giving yourself to something larger, to that mystery of the universe, whatever that might be. So remember, when the news of the day stresses you out and you just can't take it anymore, maybe start by turning off the news. Start by slowing down, taking a few breaths. Maybe listen to some music. Wring out that sopping wet sponge. And friends, remember, if you're going to be of any use to anyone else, please put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. Amen? Amen. Let's hold that in our hearts as we enter to a time of silent meditation. Spirit of life, be here in this space, in this place with us. Help us to remember who we truly are. Help us to remember what's truly important in our lives. Help us to remember that to move forward, we would be wise to do it together. So may it be. Amen. I'd invite forward Don Rolfe, the chair of our annual fund drive committee. Thanks. Please rise in body and spirit for our closing hymn, Spirit of Life, number 123. Probably most of you don't need your hymnal, perhaps. friends, as we prepare to leave this sacred space, remember that there is a power at work in the universe. It works through human hands, but it was not made by human hands. It is a creative, sustaining, and transforming power, and we can trust that power lives within our lives. That power will sustain us whenever we side with love, whenever we take a stand for peace and justice, whenever we take a risk. Friends, I invite you to trust in that power. Go in peace. I'll now extinguish our chalice. May its light and warmth stay in our hearts until we meet again. Here ends our worship. Let our service begin.